The transport ship docked at Nexus Prime with a soft hiss of equalizing pressure, and Hyunwoo Lee stepped onto the station platform, carrying only a simple black briefcase and wearing the most perfect tuxedo anyone had ever seen. The fabric was deep black like space itself, and every line was crisp and clean, as if he had just put it on moments before. Even though he had been traveling for 3 days through hyperspace to reach this neutral meeting ground, Ji-Yeon Park followed behind him, carrying a tablet and looking every bit the nervous assistant she was supposed to be, but her eyes moved constantly scanning exits and security positions with the trained awareness of someone who had spent years in dangerous places. Dong-min Choi came last, looking relaxed and calm in his simple gray uniform that marked him as embassy security, but the way he moved suggested he was much more than a simple bodyguard. The three humans walked through the massive central corridor of Nexus Prime, and everywhere alien beings stopped to stare at them, with expressions ranging from curiosity to barely concealed contempt. Towering crystal beings from the hegemony sparkled under the station lights, their faceted bodies reflecting rainbow patterns. On the walls, while silicon-based creatures from the collective moved with mechanical precision, their metal limbs clicking against the deck plates. Hyunwoo nodded politely to everyone they passed and even smiled at a group of young alien students, who giggled and whispered among themselves at seeing actual humans up close. Most aliens had never seen a human before, because Earth was still considered a backwater planet that had only recently developed faster than light travel and joined the Galactic community. The official story was that humanity had stumbled onto hyperspace technology by accident and was now desperately trying to catch up with civilizations that had been traveling between stars for thousands of years. This story was mostly true, except for the parts that mattered most. Station Administrator Vex 12 greeted them at the diplomatic level with all the proper ceremonies and protocols that such meetings required. The administrator was a collective being made of silvery, metal and glowing circuits who spoke in perfectly measured tones through a translation device. "Welcome, honored delegates from the Human Federation," the administrator said. "The Galactic Council awaits your presence in Conference Chamber 7, where preliminary discussions will begin shortly." Hyunwoo bowed slightly in the human fashion and replied, "Thank you, Administrator. We are grateful for your hospitality and look forward to productive negotiations with our galactic neighbors." His voice was warm and friendly, with just enough formality to show respect without seeming weak or submissive. Ji-Yeon made notes on her tablet while Dong-min stood quietly nearby, but both of them noticed how many security cameras were tracking their movements and how many armed guards were positioned throughout the diplomatic sector. The conference chamber was impressive, with a massive circular table surrounded by chairs designed for dozens of different alien anatomies. Large windows showed the swirling colors of the nebula that surrounded Nexus Prime and gave the station its strategic importance as a neutral meeting ground. Already seated around the table were the most important members of the Galactic Council, including Veltar of the Crystalline Hegemony, whose towering form cast prismatic light patterns across the chamber. Veltar was old even by crystal being standards, and his faceted surface showed the deep blue coloration that marked him as nobility among his people. Next to him sat Mordek, from the Silicon Collective, a being of dark metal and red glowing sensors who served as the military advisor to the Council and was known throughout the galaxy for his tactical brilliance. Other Council members included representatives from the Gaseous Confederation, the Plasma States, and several smaller civilizations that had aligned themselves with the major powers. Hyunwoo took his seat with smooth confidence, while Ji-Eun positioned herself slightly behind and to his left, where she could observe the entire room. Dong-min remained standing near the chamber entrance in the traditional position for a security escort honored council members. Hyunwoo began, "I come before you today representing not just the Human Federation, but the hopes and dreams of my entire species for peaceful coexistence among the stars." Veltar's crystalline form shifted, and light patterns rippled across his surface in what humans had learned was equivalent to dismissive laughter. "Young species," the crystal being said through his translator, "you speak of hopes and dreams, but the galaxy operates on power and resources, not wishful thinking." Mordak's red sensors focused on Hyunwoo with mechanical precision. "Your species has been evaluated. By our best analysts, Ambassador Lee, and we find humans to be emotionally unstable, technologically primitive, and unsuited for independent operation in galactic affairs. Other council members murmured agreement, and Ji-un noticed how they all seemed to have already decided the outcome of these negotiations before the humans had even arrived. Hyun-woo simply nodded and made a note in a small leather journal he had pulled from his jacket pocket. "I appreciate your frank assessment," he said calmly. "Perhaps we could discuss what forms of cooperation might be beneficial for all parties involved." The next few hours followed a predictable pattern, with the aliens presenting increasingly insulting terms disguised as generous offers. They wanted humans to accept guidance from more advanced species in exchange for protection from the dangerous unknowns of galactic politics. They offered to establish development zones on human worlds where alien corporations could extract resources while teaching humans proper civilization. They suggested that human space travel should be limited to designated routes approved by the Council to prevent humans from accidentally starting conflicts with their primitive diplomatic skills. Through it all, Hyun-woo remained perfectly polite, asking clarifying questions and taking careful notes, while never agreeing to anything or showing any sign of anger or frustration. Hyun watched the aliens carefully and noticed how they grew more confident with each passing hour, believing that the quiet human diplomat was exactly what they expected him to be. Weak, primitive, easily intimidated, they had no idea they were sitting across from a man who had single-handedly infiltrated a hegemony battle station and disabled its entire weapon system using nothing but a maintenance drone and 15 minutes of creative thinking. They did not know that the polite ambassador asking reasonable questions had once eliminated an entire collective strike team before they even realized they were under attack. Most importantly, they had never heard of the Silent Storm. During a break in the formal sessions, Veltar approached Hyun-woo with what passed for friendly conversation among his people. "Tell me, Ambassador," the crystal being said, "what does your species truly hope to gain from joining galactic civilization?" Hyun-woo sipped his tea from a delicate porcelain cup that Ji-un had produced from their diplomatic supplies. "We hope to learn from our neighbors," he replied, "to share our own knowledge and culture while contributing to the greater good of all sentient beings." Veltar's light patterns shifted to what humans had learned indicated amusement. "Noble words, but naive," the alien said. "The galaxy has no place for naive species. Ambassador, your people will need strong guidance if they wish to survive among the stars." Hyun-woo set down his teacup with the same precise movements he used for everything else. "Perhaps you are right," he said thoughtfully. "Strength does seem to be the universal language." Behind him, Ji-un finished making final adjustments to her tablet, which was not actually a tablet at all, but a sophisticated computer warfare device that had been slowly mapping and infiltrating every system on Nexus Prime since the moment they arrived. Dongmin remained by the door looking bored and unimportant, while mentally cataloging the weapons and defensive positions of every alien in the chamber. The stage was set perfectly. The aliens believed they were dealing with primitive humans who could be easily manipulated. The humans were exactly where they needed to be, and Hyun-woo Lee adjusted his bow tie with the same careful precision he had used to adjust explosive charges on enemy installations during the war that officially never happened. The evening dinner was held in the station's most elegant dining hall, where crystal chandeliers cast rainbow light through the transparent aluminum windows that showed the nebula swirling outside in brilliant colors. Veltar had insisted on hosting the meal as a gesture of friendship between species, though Hyun-woo noticed that the seating arrangement placed the three humans at one end of the long table, with aliens surrounding them on all sides. The food was excellent, with dishes prepared to accommodate human dietary requirements alongside the various energy sources and mineral compounds that different alien species consumed. Ji-un sat quietly picking at her meal, while her tablet rested innocently beside her plate, continuing its slow infiltration of the station's computer networks. Dong-min stood behind Hyun-woo's chair, maintaining his role as a simple security escort, even though his trained eyes had already identified 17 different ways to exit the dining hall, and the optimal routes to the docking bay Mordak raised what passed for a glass among his people, and the other council members followed suit in a toast. to new beginnings, the silicon being announced, and to the wisdom of experienced species guiding younger ones toward prosperity. Hyun-woo lifted his wine glass and smiled warmly, to understanding between all sentient beings. The dinner conversation was pleasant enough, with aliens sharing stories of their homeworlds and asking polite questions. About Earth and human culture, Veltar seemed particularly interested in human art and music, while a gaseous being named Flux 7 wanted to know about human reproduction methods. Hyun-woo answered every question with diplomatic skill, never revealing anything sensitive, while making the aliens feel like they were learning important secrets about humanity. As the meal progressed, the aliens became more relaxed, and their true feelings about humans began to show through their polite facades. "Your species shows promise," commented a plasma being whose name translated roughly to burning light, "but you lack the discipline necessary for true galactic citizenship. Perhaps with proper guidance you could learn to control your more primitive impulses," added another council member. Hyun-woo nodded thoughtfully. "What kind of guidance did you have in mind?" The aliens exchanged glances, and Veltar's crystalline form shifted to display the deep blue patterns that indicated serious discussion. "We have prepared a comprehensive development program," the crystal being said. "It would place human worlds under the direct supervision of council members who would help your species mature over the next few centuries." Mordak produced a data pad and slid it across the table to Hyun-woo. "The terms are quite generous considering your species' current limitations." Hyun-woo picked up the device and read through the document with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout their negotiations. The terms were exactly what he had expected: complete surrender disguised as partnership. Human worlds would be divided among council members as resource extraction zones. Earth's population would be relocated to designated areas while aliens established industrial facilities across the planet. Human space travel would be restricted to cargo runs between alien-controlled systems. All human military forces would be disbanded and replaced with alien peacekeepers. Most insulting of all humans would be required to provide a yearly tribute of their finest young people to serve as entertainment for alien nobility. Hyun-woo closed the data pad and set it down beside his wine glass. "This is quite comprehensive," he said in the same mild tone he had used all evening. "I appreciate the thought that went into preparing such detailed terms." Veltar's light patterns brightened with what humans had learned indicated satisfaction. "We felt it important to address every aspect of the transition to ensure minimal disruption. Of course, there are aspects of this arrangement that my government might find challenging to accept." Hyun-woo continued. Mordak's red sensors focused on the human ambassador with mechanical intensity. "What aspects, Ambassador?" "Well, for instance, the complete surrender of human sovereignty," Hyun-woo said calmly, "and the enslaving of my entire species." The temperature in the dining hall seemed to drop several degrees as every alien present turned to stare at the human who had just spoken the forbidden truth. Veltar's crystalline form darkened to the deep purple that indicated anger among his people. "You misunderstand the nature of our offer, Ambassador." "I understand it perfectly," Hyun-woo replied. "You want to divide my species among yourselves like property while pretending it is for our own good." Flux 7 swirled with agitated colors. "Your species lacks the wisdom to recognize generosity when it is offered." "Perhaps," Hyun-woo said, "but we have enough wisdom to recognize slavery when we see it." The aliens began speaking rapidly among themselves in their native languages, while their translation devices struggled to keep up with the excited chatter. Mordak raised one metallic appendage for silence. "Ambassador Lee, it seems your species is even more primitive than our analysts predicted. If you cannot see the benefits of our proposal, then I suppose we have nothing more to discuss," Hyun-woo said, standing from his chair. "Thank you for your hospitality, but I believe it is time for my delegation to return to Earth." He turned toward the exit but stopped when energy barriers suddenly appeared across every doorway in the dining hall. The barriers hummed with deadly power and cast blue light across the startled faces of the human delegation. "I am afraid that will not be possible," Veltar said, and his crystalline form now blazed with angry red light. "You see, Ambassador, your species never actually had a choice in this matter." Armed guards emerged from concealed positions around the dining hall, carrying energy weapons that were aimed directly at the humans. The guards were a mix of different species, but all of them wore the distinctive armor of Council enforcement units. Mordak stood and, his mechanical body unfolded to reveal additional sensor arrays and weapon systems that had been hidden beneath his diplomatic exterior. "The Council has already voted," the Silicon being announced. "Human space will be partitioned among member species, effective immediately, and your homeworld will begin resource extraction operations within the standard year." More guards entered through passages that had been concealed behind decorative wall panels, and within minutes the three humans were surrounded by enough firepower to level a small building. Ji-eun's hand moved toward the concealed weapon at her hip, but stopped when she saw Hyun-woo's almost imperceptible shake of the head. Dongmin remained perfectly still, though every muscle in his body was coiled for action. "You planned this from the beginning," Hyun-woo said, and for the first time that evening his voice carried a note of something other than diplomatic politeness. "Of course," Veltar replied. "Did you really think the Council would negotiate with a species that has been in space for less than 50 years? Your role here was simply to provide legitimacy," Mordak added, "so that our historians can record that humans were offered a choice and refused it. The three of you will serve as examples," announced another Council member. "Proof of what happens to species that defy the will of the Galactic Council." Flux 7 swirled with excited colors. "Your executions will be broadcast throughout human space to demonstrate the futility of resistance." Hyun-woo looked around the dining hall, taking in the positions of every guard and the placement of every weapon with the calm assessment of someone who had faced impossible odds before. "Gentlemen," he said in a voice that somehow carried both disappointment and something much more dangerous, "I believe there has been a fundamental misunderstanding about who exactly you are dealing with." The aliens laughed at what they perceived as desperate bravado from a trapped primitive. They had no idea that the quiet diplomat in the perfect tuxedo was calculating angles and distances with the precision of a master tactician. They did not notice Ji-eun's fingers moving across her tablet in patterns that looked like nervous fidgeting, but were actually activating dormant programs throughout the station's computer systems. Most importantly, they failed to recognize that Dongmin's relaxed stance was the deceptive calm of a predator preparing to strike. "The misunderstanding," Hyun-woo continued, "is that you seem to believe humans are helpless prey." He reached up and adjusted his bow tie with the same precise movements he had used all evening. "Allow me to correct that misconception." The lights went out instantly, plunging the dining hall into absolute darkness, except for the faint emergency illumination that cast everything in deep red shadows. In that moment of confusion and blindness, Hyun-woo moved with the fluid precision of someone who had spent years training for exactly this situation. The first guard never saw what hit him as a crystal dinner plate struck him in the center of his faceplate with enough force to crack both the plate and his helmet. The second guard managed to raise his energy weapon before a butter knife appeared in his throat, thrown with surgical accuracy that severed his vocal cords and prevented him from calling for help. Ji-eun's tablet was no longer just infiltrating the station's computer systems, but had taken complete control of them, and every security camera, every communication channel, and every automated system now obeyed her commands. The energy barriers blocking the exits flickered and died as she rerouted power throughout the diplomatic section. Emergency bulkheads began sealing off corridors at random, creating chaos among the station's security forces, who suddenly found themselves trapped in their own facility. Dongmin had produced a weapon from somewhere, though none of the aliens had seen him draw it, and began moving through the darkness with the deadly efficiency of someone who had cleared hostile territory many times before. His weapon made soft whisper sounds as it fired projectiles that dropped alien guards silently before they could raise an alarm. Veltar's crystalline form blazed with angry light as he tried to illuminate the dining hall, but the humans had already adapted to the darkness while his own radiance made him a perfect target. Impossible. The crystal being roared, "You are primitives without advanced technology." Hyunwoo's voice came from somewhere in the darkness, calm and conversational. "Technology is useful, but training and experience matter more." A serving fork appeared in Veltar's primary sensory cluster, and the alien lord stumbled backward in pain and confusion. Mordak activated every weapon system in his mechanical body, flooding the dining hall with energy beams that scorched the walls and furniture, but somehow never found their human targets. "Where are you?" the silicon being demanded. "Show yourselves and die with honor." "Honor," Hyunwoo replied from a different location, "is something you forfeited when you chose to attack diplomats under a flag of truce." Crystal glass shattered against Mordak's head with enough force to crack his metal skull and disrupt his sensor arrays. The other council members were screaming in their various languages, while their guards fired wildly into the darkness, hitting each other more often than they hit anything else. Flux 7 tried to escape by dispersing into his gaseous form, but found that Ji-eun had taken control of the atmospheric systems and was now compressing and directing his molecular structure like a weapon against his own allies. Within minutes, the dining hall fell silent except for the soft sounds of alien beings groaning in pain or fear. The emergency lights flickered back to full illumination, revealing a scene that would have been impossible to believe if not seen directly. Hyunwoo stood in the center of the room, his tuxedo still perfectly pressed except for a small tear in one sleeve that seemed to genuinely annoy him. Around him lay the unconscious or disabled forms of 24 heavily armed guards who had been defeated using nothing more than dinner utensils and improvised weapons. Veltar was on his knees, his crystalline form dim and cracked, while Mordak lay motionless with several of his mechanical components sparking and smoking. The other council members cowered behind overturned tables, staring at the humans with expressions of absolute terror. "Now then," Hyunwoo said, adjusting his cufflinks, "shall we continue our diplomatic discussion?" Captain Rexmore of Station. Security burst into the dining hall with a squad of armed officers but stopped dead when he saw the carnage. "What happened here?" the captain demanded. "A misunderstanding," Hyunwoo replied politely. "Some of our guests became confused about the nature of diplomatic immunity." Rexmore raised his weapon, but Ji-eun spoke without looking up from her tablet. "Captain, I would advise against that course of action." "Why?" the security chief asked. "Because your weapon will not function." She said simply, "None of your weapons will function." Rexmore pulled the trigger and nothing happened. His officers tried their weapons with the same result. "I have taken control of all automated systems on this station," Ji-eun explained, "including the safety interlocks on your energy weapons, which are now permanently disabled." "This is impossible," Rexmore sputtered. "Our security systems are unhackable." "Your security systems were designed by species who think in predictable patterns," Ji-eun replied. "Human thinking is chaotic and illogical, which makes us very good at finding flaws in logical systems." Dongmin stepped forward and Rexmore instinctively backed away, even though the human appeared to be unarmed. "Captain," Dongmin said, in a voice that carried absolute authority, "I suggest you call for medical assistance for the wounded, and then stand aside while we finish our business here." "You cannot do this," Rexmore protested. "There will be consequences." "What consequences?" Hyunwoo asked mildly. "Will the council lodge a formal complaint about humans defending themselves against an unprovoked attack?" He gestured around the dining hall where the evidence of alien aggression was undeniable. "Will they admit to the galaxy that they lured diplomats into a trap and then were defeated by 3 humans using dinner utensils?" Rexmore looked around the room, taking in the energy barriers that had trapped the humans and the concealed positions where guards had been hiding. "This was an ambush," he said, slowly. "You attacked diplomats under a flag of truce." "That is correct," Hyunwoo confirmed, "which under both human and galactic law makes them enemy combatants rather than protected negotiators." The captain holstered his useless weapon and backed toward the exit. "I will call for medical teams." "Thank you, Captain," Hyunwoo said, And while you are at it, perhaps you could contact Admiral Zix Kala of the Council Defense Fleet and inform her that there has been a diplomatic incident. Rex Moore paused at the doorway. What should I tell her? Tell her that Ambassador Lee requests an immediate meeting to discuss the revision of certain treaty proposals. After the security team left, the dining hall fell silent, except for the soft sounds of alien beings trying to recover from their unexpected defeat. Veltar managed to raise his damaged crystalline head. What are you? Hyunwoo straightened his bow tie and checked his reflection in a broken mirror. I am exactly what I appear to be. A diplomat who prefers negotiation to violence. But, he continued, I am also a human being, and humans have a particular talent for violence when diplomacy fails. Mordak's damaged voice systems produced static-filled words. The fleet will destroy you. Perhaps, Hyunwoo agreed. But first they will have to find us. Ji-eun looked up from her tablet. The station's communication array is now broadcasting a looped message throughout the sector. What message? Veltar asked weakly. A complete recording of tonight's dinner conversation, she replied, including the part where the Galactic Council revealed their plan to enslave humanity. The aliens stared at her in horror. By now, every species in known space is hearing exactly what the Council thinks of younger civilizations. Ji-eun continued, I suspect many of them will find it quite enlightening. Hyunwoo pulled out his leather journal and made a note. It appears we will need to modify our negotiation strategy. Admiral Zix Kala arrived with the pride of the Council Defense Fleet, 3 massive battle cruisers bristling with enough weapons to reduce Nexus Prime to component atoms. The Admiral herself was a magnificent creature from the plasma states whose brilliant yellow form blazed like a miniature star as she materialized in the station's main communications center. This is Admiral Zix Kala of the Council Defense Fleet. Her voice boomed through every speaker on the station. I demand the immediate surrender of the human terrorists who have attacked council members. In the dining hall, Hyunwoo calmly poured himself a fresh cup of tea from the service that had somehow survived the recent unpleasantness. Ji-eun, would you be so kind as to open a communication channel with the Admiral? He requested. Of course, Ambassador, she replied, and her fingers danced across the tablet that had become the nerve center of their operation. Hyunwoo's image appeared on the main viewer in the Admiral's command center, and he looked exactly like what he was supposed to be, a polite diplomat in a perfect tuxedo sitting at a dinner table, Admiral Zix Kala. He said with a warm smile, Thank you for responding so quickly to Captain Rex Moore's message. You will surrender immediately, the Admiral demanded, and submit to Council justice for your crimes against galactic law. I am afraid there has been a misunderstanding, Hyunwoo replied. We are here under diplomatic immunity conducting official negotiations. With the Galactic Council, you have attacked council members. We defended ourselves against an unprovoked assault, Hyunwoo corrected gently. I believe you will find that the evidence supports our position. On her command screen, the Admiral watched the complete recording of the evening's events from multiple angles showing clearly how the aliens had trapped and threatened the human diplomats. This changes nothing, she declared, though her plasma form flickered with uncertainty. You are still responsible for the deaths of Council security forces. Actually, Admiral, no one has died. Hyunwoo said, We took great care to use non-lethal force, despite the deadly nature of the attack against us. This was technically true, though many of the alien guards would require extensive medical treatment. Your restraint does not excuse your actions. Perhaps not, but it does demonstrate our commitment to civilized behavior even under extreme provocation. Behind Hyunwoo, the surviving council, members watched this exchange with growing horror as they realized the human was somehow winning a diplomatic argument while surrounded by the evidence of his lethal capabilities. Admiral Zix Kala studied her tactical displays showing the 3 battlecruisers in perfect attack formation around the station. You are outnumbered and outgunned, she stated. Surrender now, and your deaths will be quick, Admiral Hyunwoo said, and for the first time his voice carried a note of something other than diplomatic politeness. I believe you are making the same mistake your colleagues made earlier this evening. What mistake? You are assuming that humans are helpless. On the Admiral's command screen, warning lights began flashing as her ship's tactical officer reported massive system failures throughout the fleet. Admiral, our weapons are not responding. The officer called out, all targeting systems are offline. Engineering teams to all weapon stations. The Admiral ordered, but her communications. Officer shook his head. Admiral, internal communications are down fleet-wide. How is this possible? On the main viewer, Hyunwoo continued sipping his tea with the same calm expression he had maintained throughout the evening. The Galactic Council has been monitoring human activities for 50 years, he said conversationally. What you may not realize is that humans have been monitoring galactic activities for just as long. Ji-eun looked up from her tablet with a satisfied smile. Admiral, I have been inside your computer system since the moment your ships entered this sector. Your security protocols are quite sophisticated, she continued, but they were designed to prevent intrusion by known galactic species using predictable methods. Human computer technology developed along completely different lines, she explained. We use chaos theory and quantum probability rather than linear logic. Your systems literally cannot understand what we are doing to them. The Admiral's plasma form blazed with fury. Even if you have disabled our weapons, you cannot escape this system. We have no intention of escaping. Hyunwoo replied, we came here to conduct diplomatic negotiations, and that is exactly what we intend to do. You are in no position to negotiate anything. On the contrary, Admiral, I believe our position has improved considerably. On the tactical display, every weapon on every council ship went from yellow to red, indicating critical system failure. Admiral, the tactical officer reported with barely controlled panic, all weapons are now offline and power is being rerouted to non-essential systems. Our artificial gravity is fluctuating and life support is operating at minimum levels. The Admiral stared at her displays in disbelief. You are using our own ships against us. We are demonstrating that technology alone does not guarantee victory, Hyunwoo corrected. Training experience and, most importantly, the will to do whatever is necessary matter. Much more. Dong-min had been standing quietly near the dining hall entrance, but now he stepped forward into the camera's view. Admiral, he said, and his voice carried the absolute authority of someone who had commanded troops in desperate situations. I recommend you recall your boarding parties before they encounter station defenses. What boarding parties? She demanded. The ones your tactical officer launched 15 minutes ago, Dong-min replied. They should be reaching the outer docking bays right about now. Throughout Nexus, prime automated defense systems that had been dormant for decades, suddenly activated under Ji-eun's control security robots, emerged from maintenance shafts, while automated turrets extended from concealed positions. Council boarding parties found themselves facing resistance they had not expected from a civilian space station. This is impossible, Admiral Zix-Kala protested. Nexus Prime is a neutral facility with minimal defenses. Minimal does not mean non-existent, Dong-min explained, and every defense system on this station is now under human control, Admiral. Her communications officer called out, we are receiving surrender requests from all boarding teams. They report being overwhelmed by automated defenses. Hyunwoo set down his teacup and stood from the table, smoothing his jacket with the same precise movements he had used all evening. Admiral Zix-Kala, he said, I propose we end this unfortunate misunderstanding before more beings are injured. What do you propose? A simple exchange. Hyunwoo replied, you withdraw your fleet and recall your boarding parties, and in return we will restore control of your ships and release your personnel. And then we will conduct the diplomatic negotiations. That brought us here in the first place. The Admiral's plasma form flickered with uncertainty. The Council will never agree to negotiate with terrorists. Then perhaps, Hyunwoo said with a smile that never reached his eyes, the Council should consider negotiating with diplomats instead. Around the dining hall, the surviving alien representatives watched this exchange with growing understanding. They were not dealing with primitive humans who could be easily intimidated. They were facing something far more dangerous. Humans who looked like diplomats but fought like warriors. Humans who preferred conversation but excelled at violence. Humans who had turned the galaxy's most sophisticated technology against itself, using nothing but unconventional Thinking Admiral Zixkala studied her tactical displays where her mighty fleet sat helpless and dead in space. "Very well, Ambassador," she said finally. "We accept your proposal." "Excellent," Hyunwoo replied. "Shall we say 30 minutes for fleet withdrawal, and then we can begin fresh negotiations?" Agreed. As the communication ended, Veltar's cracked crystalline form blazed with desperate light. "You cannot possibly believe this charade will succeed. The entire galaxy will unite against your species." When word of this spreads, Hyunwoo adjusted his cufflinks and checked his reflection in a broken mirror. "Word has already spread," he replied calmly. "Thanks to Ji-Eun's communication protocols, every species in the sector now knows exactly what happened here tonight. They know the Council lured diplomats into a trap. They know the Council planned to enslave an entire species. And they know that 3 humans defeated the Council's finest forces using dinner utensils and superior tactics." He straightened his bow tie with the same precise movements he had used all evening. "I suspect many species will find this information quite enlightening." 6 hours later, the dining hall had been restored to perfect order with fresh flowers on the tables and clean linens covering the evidence of the earlier unpleasantness. Hyunwoo sat at the head of the conference table, wearing a fresh tuxedo that was somehow even more perfectly pressed than the first one. His bow tie was immaculate, his hair was perfectly styled, and he held a delicate porcelain teacup, as if nothing more dramatic than a minor scheduling conflict had interrupted their negotiations. Around the table sat what remained of the Galactic Council, though their numbers had been significantly reduced by medical necessity and sudden urgent business elsewhere in the galaxy. Veltar was present, though his crystalline form was now held together, with emergency bonding agents, and his light patterns were dim and flickering. Mordak had been mostly repaired, but several of his mechanical components still sparked occasionally, and his voice systems produced random static. Admiral Zixkala had joined them as the senior council military representative, though her plasma form burned much less brightly than it had during their earlier confrontation. The other surviving council members sat in careful silence, occasionally glancing at the human delegation with expressions that ranged from fear to barely concealed awe. Ji-Eun sat slightly behind Hyunwoo, with her tablet resting innocently on the table, though everyone present now understood that the innocent device was the most dangerous weapon in the room. Dong-min stood by the entrance in his traditional security position, but his relaxed stance no longer fooled anyone about his true capabilities. "Now then," Hyunwoo began in the same mild tone he had used at the start of their negotiations. "I believe we were discussing treaty terms," Ambassador Admiral Zixkala said carefully. "Perhaps we should begin with a formal apology for the misunderstanding that occurred earlier." "That is very kind of you, Admiral, but unnecessary." Hyunwoo replied, "Diplomatic negotiations often involve testing each other's resolve and capabilities. Though I do hope we can proceed with more traditional methods going forward." Veltar's damaged form flickered with confused light patterns. "You are not going to demand reparations for the attack against your delegation." "Why would we do that?" Hyunwoo asked with genuine curiosity. "You tested our defenses and we demonstrated our capabilities. Now we can negotiate from a position of mutual understanding." The aliens exchanged glances that mixed relief with deeper concern. "Very well," Mordak said through his static-filled voice systems. "What terms does humanity propose?" Hyunwoo opened his leather journal and consulted his notes. "We propose a simple framework for cooperation between equal partners." "Equal partners," Admiral Zixkala repeated. "Of course," Hyunwoo confirmed. "Surely that was always the intention." Ji-Eun produced a datapad and slid it across the table to the alien representatives. "We have prepared a comprehensive partnership agreement," she explained, "based on principles of mutual respect and shared benefit." Veltar picked up the device with his damaged manipulator appendages and began reading through the document. The terms were nothing like what the aliens had expected. Instead of demanding tribute or territory, the humans proposed genuine cooperation, joint scientific research projects with shared discoveries, open trade agreements with fair exchange, rates cultural exchange programs to promote understanding between species. Most importantly, the treaty included protection clauses for younger species who were just entering galactic civilization. "This is unprecedented," Veltar said. You are offering to share advanced technology with species that attacked you. We are offering to share knowledge with potential friends, Hyunwoo corrected. Violence was your choice, not ours. We prefer cooperation to conflict, though we are prepared for either. Admiral Zix Kyla studied the document carefully. These terms are remarkably generous considering your demonstrated capabilities. Our capabilities are defensive in nature, Hyunwoo explained. We have no interest in conquering or controlling other species. We simply want to ensure that humanity has the right to exist as a free and independent civilization. And you believe this treaty will accomplish that? I believe this treaty will demonstrate that cooperation benefits everyone involved. Mordax, mechanical head, tilted in what passed for confusion among his people. What about the recordings of our earlier conversation? What about them? Hyunwoo asked. They show the Council's true intentions toward younger species. They show that some Council members were operating under incorrect assumptions about human capabilities, Hyunwoo replied diplomatically, assumptions that have now been corrected. You are not going to use them as leverage against us. Why would we do that? Hyunwoo seemed genuinely puzzled. We came here to establish friendly relations, not to create enemies. Ji-eun looked up from her tablet. Though the recordings will remain in our archives as a reminder of the importance of honest communication, the threat was subtle, but unmistakable. The aliens would behave honorably or face the consequences of their previous actions being revealed to the entire galaxy. Admiral Zix Kala made a decision that would echo through galactic history. The Council accepts these terms. Excellent. Hyunwoo said and made a note in his journal. Shall we schedule follow-up meetings to work out the implementation details? There is one thing I must ask, Veltar said hesitantly. What exactly are you? I am a diplomat. Hyunwoo replied simply. But the things you did tonight were necessary to protect my delegation and complete our mission. You fought like a trained warrior. All humans receive basic combat training, Hyunwoo explained. We find it helps in negotiations. This was not entirely true, but it was not entirely false either. Dongmin stepped forward and the aliens instinctively tensed. Ambassador, we should prepare for departure. Of course, Hyunwoo agreed. Thank you for reminding me. He stood and straightened his jacket with the same precise movements he had used throughout their stay. Admiral Council members, it has been a pleasure conducting business with you. I look forward to our future cooperation. As the human delegation prepared to leave, Admiral Zix Kala asked, the question that would haunt galactic intelligence services for years to come, Ambassador Lee, who are you really? Hyunwoo paused at the doorway and turned back with a smile that was both genuine and terrifying. I am exactly who I appear to be. Admiral, a diplomat who prefers conversation to violence, but I am also a human being, and humans are very good at adapting to whatever situation they find themselves in. Remember that when you think about our future relationship, hours later, as their transport ship departed Nexus Prime, Ji-eun asked the question that had been troubling her since the negotiations ended. Do you think they will honor the treaty? Hyunwoo adjusted his bow tie and watched the swirling nebula disappear behind them. They will honor it as long as they remember what happened tonight. And when they forget, then we will remind them. Dongmin looked up from his security reports. The recordings have been distributed to intelligence networks throughout the A sector. Every major civilization now knows that the Council planned to enslave humanity, and they know that 3 humans defeated the Council's finest forces using improvised weapons. Good, Hyunwoo said. Fear is a useful foundation for respect. Though, I hope we can build something better over time. Ji-eun made final notes in her mission report. Earth Command will be pleased with the results. Will they? Hyunwoo asked. We were supposed to be conducting quiet diplomatic negotiations. Instead, we started a galactic incident that will reshape interstellar politics for decades. You followed your orders, Ambassador. Dongmin reminded him, protect human interests by any means necessary. Mission accomplished. Hyunwoo nodded and opened his leather journal to review the evening's events. In neat handwriting, he recorded every detail of the negotiations, including his assessment of each alien representative and recommendations for future contact. On the final page, he wrote a single line that summarized the entire operation. Sometimes the best diplomacy is conducted at the point of a butter knife. He closed the journal and settled back in his chair to watch the stars. Behind them, Nexus Prime continued its orbit around the swirling nebula. Throughout the station, repair crews worked to fix the damage from the evening's excitement, while intelligence operatives tried to understand exactly what had happened. In the galactic networks, the story was already spreading. The Galactic Council had attacked human diplomats and been defeated by 3 humans using dinner utensils. The humans had somehow taken control of the most advanced military technology in known space. Most importantly, humanity was clearly much more dangerous than anyone had suspected. The galaxy would never look at humans the same way again. And Hyunwoo Lee adjusted his bow tie and smiled at the thought of future negotiations, where aliens would approach the table, already knowing that the quiet diplomat in the perfect Tuxedo might just be the most dangerous being in the room.